The Marksman's Redemption. Chapter 1. A Man of God with a Killer's Hands. My name is Jack Harper. At 40, I'm an ex-Marine Scout sniper who now teaches people how to shoot in a small town where everyone knows your business before you do. My wife Rachel, the one who runs charity events at the local church, was my salvation after Kandahar until a new priest arrived in our parish. I've stared death in the face 100 times, watched the world through crosshairs, and I know damn well when someone's lying. Father David is a liar. And what's worse, my wife, it seems, is too. 1. The girl burns through her rounds faster than I expect. All 8 dead center hits, not a single stray. I give her an approving nod and extend my hand for the pistol. Excellent work, Lily. I see you took my advice about breath control. The 13-year-old blushes at the praise, stocky build, serious eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The local pharmacist's daughter. In our little town of Pine Ridge, she's the only one who comes to the range without a gaggle of boys in tow. She arrives alone, permission slip signed by her father in precise handwriting. He explained to me once, voice dropped low like he was confessing a sin, that he wanted his daughter able to protect herself. In these times and this country, Mr. Harper, he'd said with a gravity that brooked no argument. I didn't bother disagreeing. Breathe like you're kissing, not like you're dying, I tell the others, unscrewing the suppressor from the training pistol. Stability trumps speed every time. Military knows this. Criminals don't. That's why we win. Someone among the kids sniggers. The oldest can't be more than 15. 4 boys, still young enough to listen when adults speak. Give them a year or two, they'll decide they know everything. So how many did you waste over there, Mr. Harper? In Afghanistan? Asks Kevin, a gangly redhead with a cop for a father. His neck and ears bloom red as he waits for my answer. I don't respond. Just lock eyes with him until those patches of crimson spread across his entire face like a battlefield wound. Then I say, voice quiet as a confession. 5-minute break, then we practice on moving targets. I keep my face stone-carved until they shuffle off toward the vending machine. Only then do I allow myself to exhale. Wonder if teenagers will ever stop asking questions like that. Probably not. They see the faded tattoo on my forearm, once a Marine, always a Marine, and immediately start fantasizing about heroics. About how many heads I've blown off from a mile away. About how badass I must be. I'm not badass, just a survivor. A dark blue Chrysler creeps into the range's parking lot, catching in my peripheral vision. Professional habit, notice everything, reveal nothing. Nobody exits the vehicle, but the tinted window rolls down just enough for me to glimpse a face. Male, olive-skinned, Mediterranean, not Middle Eastern, definitely a stranger in our little backwater. He sits watching the range, not the children, the doorway me. I feel his gaze like a physical touch, the way I felt sniper eyes in Kandahar. A minute later, the window slides up, and the Chrysler pulls away with deliberate slowness. It's all so mundane the kids notice nothing, but I feel the hair on my neck stand at attention like a good soldier. The sun bleeds its last light when I usher out the final student. Friday's a short day. Summer vacation means kids have better things to do than shooting holes in paper. I methodically clean each weapon, movements honed to mechanical precision. Disassemble, wipe, oil, reassemble, test. My hands remember what my mind has tried to forget. First the training models, then my personal Glock. The old wall clock ticks with military precision. Metal fits into my palms like long-lost lovers reuniting. The only thing that truly calms the storm inside me. A weapon never lies to you, my instructor used to say. It either fires or it doesn't, most honest thing in the world. After the weapons, I methodically check every inch of the building, every corner and crevice. Old paranoia, maybe, but it's kept me breathing this long. Windows locked, alarms set, lights killed. The range settles into its nightly hibernation. The Chrysler tugs at my thoughts, but I refuse to let it take root. Not yet. 2. Our home squats at the edge of town, where paved streets surrender to dirt roads and those roads bow to pine forest. When I pull up, twilight has already smothered the land and soft light glows from the windows. Rachel's beaten me home from church. I kill the truck's engine and sit for a moment, watching smoke drift lazily from the chimney. If gunshots at the range calm me, this smoke is the only thing that makes me truly happy. Chimney smoke means Rachel in the kitchen. Domestic tranquility. Something stable in a world that tilts on its axis when you least expect it. She opens the door before I can slide the key in, as if she's been waiting for my return since the moment I left. Perfect timing. Just pulled a pie from the oven, she says, smiling. Rachel's smile, the most beautiful thing I've seen in 40 years of ugly. Blueberry? I ask, kissing her cheek. She smells of vanilla and something else, something new, perfume. Don't remember buying her anything like that. Apple, blueberry crops weak this year because of the drought. At least that's what they told me at the store. She turns away and I catch the subtle shift in her behavior. Movements too quick, fingers too often adjusting a strand of hair. Rachel's nervous. Nothing unusual there. She's naturally anxious, always fretting about small things. And yet, over dinner, she talks more than usual. Chatters about parish affairs, the charity initiatives of the Ladies' Committee, how the aging pastor has finally received an assistant. You can't imagine what a relief this is for Father Joseph. He can barely move with his bad knees, and the new priest is so energetic, so modern. Her eyes flash with something I haven't seen in ages. Excitement. You'll definitely come to Sunday service with me, right, Jack? I want you to meet Father David. Of course, I reply, though I've got nothing against old Joseph. Maybe the church does need fresh blood. I don't attend services as often as Rachel would like. After the war, my relationship with God became complicated. Sometimes I think I've seen too much to believe in His mercy. A strange car stopped by the range today, I mentioned casually. Dark Chrysler, 3 strangers inside, just sat there staring at the building, then drove off. Rachel's fork freezes halfway to her mouth. Strangers in Pine Ridge, you think, something criminal. Don't know, just seemed odd. Maybe tourists who got lost. Her voice pitches higher than normal. Though who'd come here as a tourist, right? She laughs nervously, then suddenly turns serious. Were you careful, with the children and everything? You know I'm always careful. Rachel nods, but something in her eyes troubles me. 4 years of marriage, not a lifetime, but enough to learn the geography of her expressions. Don't worry, I say. It probably means nothing. Of course, she replies quickly, but I see her small hand crushing the napkin under the table. Rachel's always been nervous around strangers. It started about a year ago, this fear of outsiders. I dismissed it as anxiety or too many crime shows watched while I was at the range. We met shortly after my return from my last deployment. She'd come to town for a distant relative's funeral and decided to stay, took a job at the local library. We crossed paths at the cafe where I was scanning newspapers for job listings. She sat at my table because there were no empty ones. 2 months later, I proposed. 3 months later, we married. Fast, unnaturally fast for someone like me, a man who could lie motionless for days awaiting the perfect shot. But with Rachel, everything was different. She was the light that chased away the demons that followed me home from war. Or at least, that's what I believed then. The charity gala, she says suddenly, clearly changing subjects. This year we're raising funds for the children's hospice. Father David suggested displaying the church treasures during the event, says it'll attract more visitors. Good idea, I agree, though I couldn't care less. Is there anything worth seeing? Oh yes, her eyes light up. They've recently brought in an ancient St. Francis medallion for a temporary exhibition. It's inlaid with precious stones and extremely valuable. You'll see. Sunday after service, okay. I nod, not understanding why church artifacts spark such enthusiasm in her, but unwilling to dampen her mood. Evenings when Rachel's smiles have become too rare lately. 3. Sunday arrives with unwelcome speed. I don my only decent suit, purchased for someone's funeral years ago. Rachel looks stunning, blue dress, hair swept into an elegant bun, wearing the necklace I gave her on our anniversary. There's something different in her entire demeanor, a contained energy, like she's on stage, playing the role of devoted wife. Maybe I'm just paranoid. The sniper profession breeds suspicion. We see threats where there are none. The church in our town is a stern white structure with a tall spire visible from almost anywhere. Inside, it smells of incense and wood polish. Sunlight streams through stained glass, painting the floor in kaleidoscope colors. We sit closer to the altar than I'd prefer. I don't like being the center of attention, even in church. Especially in church. There's too much unfinished business between me and God. The service begins, and I immediately notice the difference. If old Father Joseph droned like a sleepy bumblebee, lulling half the congregation to slumber, the new priest speaks with energy, frequently changing inflection, making eye contact with everyone in his path. Father David is younger than I expected, barely past 35. Dark hair neatly trimmed, olive skin, and eyes carrying a strange mix of sincerity and vigilance. His sermon is good, about the necessity of forgiveness and mercy, with a couple of well-placed jokes that draw restrained laughter from the parishioners. For a moment, I catch myself thinking such a priest might bring me back to the fold. But something bothers me, though I can't pinpoint what exactly. After the service, Rachel drags me to the altar where Father David chats with elderly parishioners. "Father David, please meet my husband, Jack," she says with such pride you'd think I was some prize she'd won at the county fair. The priest turns and our eyes lock. For a split second, no longer, I catch something in his gaze, assessing, almost like a sniper determining if a target is worth the bullet. Then it vanishes, replaced by a warm smile as he extends his hand. Finally meeting the husband of our tireless Rachel. She's told me so much about you that I feel we're already acquainted. I shake his hand and the grip is nothing like what I'd expect from a man of the cloth. Not soft, not limp. It's firm, the palm calloused from hard work, the kind of handshake you get from farmers, mechanics, or fighters. "Likewise, Father," I say, trying not to reveal my surprise. "Rachel's spoken highly of your influence on the parish." I notice Rachel and the priest exchange a lingering glance that lasts a second longer than appropriate. There's some hidden message in it, understood only by them. It's not flirtation, something deeper, almost like complicity. "Jack owns the shooting range," Rachel says. "He teaches kids how to handle firearms safely." "Is that so?" Father David's voice carries genuine interest. "Sounds unusual for our quiet town." "Everyone should know how to protect themselves," I reply. "Even from God." His question carries a joke, but his eyes remain serious. "Especially from him," I counter, and Rachel laughs nervously, as if trying to diffuse the sudden tension. "You know, Father David, you should visit Jack's range sometime," she suggests. "Many locals stop by to familiarize themselves with the business." "With pleasure," the priest nods. "I haven't shot in a long time. I mean, I've never tried. It could be an interesting experience." My internal radar catches that slip, but before I can comment, we're interrupted by elderly Mrs. Henderson, desperate for the priest's attention. We move away, and Rachel squeezes my hand tightly. "Well, what do you think? Isn't he a wonderful speaker, and so devoted to the parish?" "Yes, impressive," I say, feeling inexplicable unease rising inside me. "Where's he from?" "California, I think," Rachel answers uncertainly, as if this question never occurred to her. "Or Arizona, I don't exactly remember. Does it matter?" "Not at all," I agree, but mentally note to learn more about this young priest with a laborer's hands. 4. Father David appears at the range 2 days later, on Tuesday. when there are no classes and I'm drowning in paperwork in the small office behind the shooting lanes. The door chimes, and I step into the main room. The priest stands hesitantly at the entrance, still in his black garment with white collar. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harper," he greets me with a smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, no students today." He walks in, examining the range with interest. The walls display targets, racks of training weapons, several safety posters. "It's very tidy in here," he observes. "Not what I expected to see at a shooting range." "What did you expect? Gunpowder smoke and cowboys shooting in all directions," I smirk. "Something like that," he smiles back. "How many students do you have?" "About 20 regulars, as many more who come occasionally." "Children?" "Mostly. There are a few adults who have never held a gun before but decided to learn for self-defense." He nods, approaching the weapon rack. "You served correct, Rachel mentioned it." "Marines, 3 tour in Afghanistan," I answer curtly, feeling the muscles in my back tense. I don't like discussing this with outsiders. "Was it difficult, coming back?" His voice carries an odd note, almost like sympathy, but not quite, as if he's actually asking about something else. "Had easier times," I reply evasively. He stands examining the training pistols behind glass, and I suddenly make a decision. "Want to try, Father? First lessons free." He turns to me, and for a moment his face contorts with something resembling fear. But it passes quickly, replaced by polite refusal. "Oh no, I don't think that would be appropriate." "Why, does the fear of God prohibit shooting at paper targets?" I tease, not sure why I'm pushing. "Not exactly," he smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. "I've just never been good at such things." "I think you're underestimating yourself," I say, retrieving the key to the display case. "Come on, Father. You can't study your flock without understanding what they do." It's a strange argument, but surprisingly it works. Father David slowly nods. "Well, if you insist, just one shot." I take out a .22 caliber pistol, the lightest which beginners start with. I explain basic safety principles, demonstrate how to hold it, how to aim. He listens with such attention you'd think I was reading scripture. When I hand him the weapon, something strange happens. His hands freeze momentarily, as if hesitating, then take the pistol in the way professionals hold it. Not awkwardly like a student, but confidently, with the correct grip. But his hands visibly tremble. I notice another oddity. He instinctively checks the chamber with his index finger, not his pinky, as all professional shooters do. It's a small but critical mistake no one with professional training would make. As if he knows how to handle weapons but learned it not from police or military but somewhere else. "Everything all right, Father?" I ask, noticing the pallor that's come over his face. "Yes, of course," he quickly replies, "just a bit nervous." I help him assume the correct stance and he fires. The bullet hits precisely the center of the target, a perfect shot for a beginner, too perfect. Father David stares at the target with an odd expression, a mixture of pride and anxiety. Then quickly, almost abruptly, returns the pistol to me. "Impressive for a first attempt," I say, carefully observing his reaction. "Must be luck," he replies, wiping his hands with a handkerchief as if the weapon left dirt on them. "Or God's will." "Of course," I nod, not hiding my skepticism. "You know, Mr. Harper," his voice sounds unexpectedly serious, "sometimes the past leaves marks on us that we cannot erase. Even those who have found a new path carry the burden of former sins." "Speaking from personal experience, Father." He gives me a long look, then forces a smile. "We are all sinners, Mr. Harper. Some acknowledge it, others do not." The priest glances at his watch and pretends to suddenly remember an important meeting. He thanks me for the lesson, promises to return, and practically flees from the range. I stand watching the door close behind him, trying to understand what exactly troubles me. Something doesn't fit in Father David's image. His hands are too familiar with hard work for a man whose profession is prayers and sermons. His grip too confident for a novice. His shot too accurate for a first-timer. But what disturbs me most is his fear. A priest who's afraid not of weapons, but of his own ability to handle them. I check the pistol he shot, mechanically disassembling and cleaning it. And I notice one more oddity. On the grip remains a faint aroma. A subtle, barely perceptible scent of perfume. The same as that new fragrance recently emanating from Rachel. 5. Betty's Diner, the only place in our town where you can eat outside your own home. Old-fashioned interior, worn red booths, daily special written in chalk on a board. I sit by the window, contemplating my eggs and bacon, when the bell over the door chimes. 3 men enter, the same ones from the Chrysler that watched the range. The eldest, a graying man with immaculate manicure and expensive watch, looks like a successful businessman. Behind him follow 2 younger ones, a hulking brute with a neck like a bull and a nervous, thin guy with darting eyes. They sit at a table in the far corner. I pretend to be completely absorbed in my breakfast, but my side vision, working like radar, misses none of their movements. They speak Spanish, a language I know somewhat thanks to 6 months spent at a NATO base in Spain. Their conversation is hushed, but I catch separate words. Buscar, to search. La reliquia, the relic. Traidor, the traitor. They're definitely searching for something or someone. And judging by their tense postures and cautious glances, their search has nothing to do with tourism. Betty, a plump woman in her 50s who knows all the town gossip, approaches their table with a coffee pot. When she returns to the counter, I call her over. Betty, those guys, did they ask about anything? She leans in, lowering her voice. About the new priest, wanted to know where the Catholic Church is. I told them it's on Main Street, can't miss it. She pauses, studying my face. Are they friends of yours, Jack? No, just curious. Tourists, probably, she shrugs. Though it's strange they chose our town. Nothing to see here, honestly. Strange indeed, I agree, leaving a tip and heading for the exit. At the door, I nearly collide with the eldest of the trio. He politely steps aside, allowing me to pass, but his gaze is sharp, evaluating. Excuse me, he says with a slight accent. Are you local? Yes, I answer briefly. I thought so, he smiles, but the smile never touches his eyes. My name is Eduardo Santos. I'm looking for your local church. They say it has interesting architecture. Straight down Main Street, you can't miss it. I repeat Betty's words. Thank you, he pauses as if deciding. I suppose you've known the new priest for a while. Father David, correct? Recently acquainted, I reply, carefully watching his reaction. Is that so? His voice carries slight disappointment. Pity, I hope to learn about him. We're old acquaintances. I suppress a smile. He's lying and we both know it. I was taught to recognize lies in Kandahar, where lives depended on it. Micro-expressions, voice tone, eye movements, all betray Eduardo Santos. If I see him, I'll mention you were looking for him, I say, not offering my name. I'd appreciate that, he nods, and something like understanding passes between us. We're both dangerous men, we both sense it. Leaving the diner, I climb into my truck and sit there for a while, analyzing the situation. 3 strangers speaking Spanish, asking about the priest and some relic. A priest too skilled with weapons. My wife, suddenly more nervous, more distant, more secretive. Something's happening in our little town. Something that threatens the peace I've fought so hard to earn. 6. Evening descends on our yard like a heavy blanket. I sit on the back porch, mechanically cleaning my old hunting rifle. My hands work independently while my brain sorts through the peculiarities of recent days. Rachel's in the kitchen preparing dinner. Through the open window drifts her humming. She's singing some church hymn. 4 years living together, and I still can't believe she chose me, a battle-worn veteran with a heavy past and an uncertain future. My phone vibrates. Virginia area code. Brian Taylor, an old Army buddy who, after discharge, landed a job with a private security firm with government connections. Long time no hear, Harper. His voice sounds as gravelly as it did 10 years ago in the desert. Too long, I reply. How have you been, Brian? Alive, healthy, no complaints. You? All good. So why the call? He asks directly. You never call just to chat. I hesitate for a second. I need information on someone, unofficially. Someone shady show up in your quiet little town. Possibly. What kind of person? Brian asks, all business. A priest, Catholic, name's David. Don't know the last name. Recently appeared in our parish. About 35–40 years old, dark hair, olive skin, probably Southern European origin. And what's wrong with him? He shoots too well for someone who supposedly never held a gun, and he gets nervous around weapons, not because he fears them but because he's too familiar with them. Brian whistles. Interesting clergyman. Anything else? 3 Spaniards came to town asking about him. One introduced himself as Eduardo Santos. Santos? Tension creeps into Brian's voice. Could be problematic. Why? Let's just say it's not a name you want to hear in a small, peaceful town. I'll make inquiries, but be careful, Harper, if the Spanish mafia is involved. You think that's possible? I lower my voice, hearing Rachel approach the door. Anything's possible. Give me a couple of days. I end the call as the door opens and Rachel steps onto the porch. Who were you talking to? She asks, trying to sound casual, but I hear the note of anxiety in her voice. Old Army friend, I answer. Brian Taylor, remember I told you about him? Ah, yes, of course, she nods, but her gaze wanders. Dinner's almost ready, coming in. In a minute, I smile at her, trying to appear calm. Just finishing with the rifle. She leaves and I sit watching the sunset, feeling the shadows thicken around our house. After talking with Brian, my concern has only intensified. If the priest isn't who he claims to be, and if the Spaniards are hunting him with malicious intent, we could all be in danger. Especially Rachel, who spends so much time at church. Making a decision, I put away the rifle and head to the garage. In the far corner, behind a stack of old tires, hides my Army footlocker. I open it and retrieve several items. Night vision binoculars, a compact camera with telephoto lens, a small digital recorder with a directional microphone. Old tools from another life. I hoped I'd never need to use them again. After dinner with Rachel, I say I need to check the security system at the range. She nods, asking no questions, agrees too easily, as if she also needs freedom tonight. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting in my truck on a quiet street opposite the priest's house, a small cottage belonging to the church. Windows dark, but I'm patient. I learned to wait in the desert, where time flows differently. Almost at midnight, light appears in one of the windows. A few minutes later, Father David emerges. He's no longer in clerical attire, but ordinary jeans and a dark jacket. In his hand, a small bag. He looks around, then quickly walks to his car. I wait until he's driven a safe distance, then follow, keeping to the shadows. Well then, Padre, let's see where you're heading at the hour of night prayers, I think, turning the corner after his vehicle. The hunt has begun. Chapter 2, Secret Meetings. 1. I know what it's like to lie motionless for hours. In Helmand, I once spent 36 hours on the roof of a half-collapsed building, barely moving, barely breathing, while the sun scorched my back and sand infiltrated every sweat-soaked fold of clothing. Then I was waiting for a man planning to blow up a column of our boys. Now I'm waiting for a man of God. The difference is negligible. Both hunts require absolute concentration and complete body control. The priest's car moves unhurriedly as if out for a leisurely stroll. I maintain a safe distance, headlights killed. The moon is bright tonight, casting enough light to follow the deserted road. Town disappears behind us. Asphalt gives way to gravel, then to a dirt road leading to the forest. Father David turns onto a barely visible path between trees. I drive past, park a little further on, and return on foot, instinctively choosing a route where twigs won't crack underfoot. Night embraces me like an old friend. Ahead between trees looms the silhouette of a hunting cabin. I know this place, an abandoned ranger's hut occasionally used by local hunters during season. Few people come here, especially this time of year. Perfect location for a clandestine meeting. I circle the cabin in a wide arc, finding a position on a small hill with an excellent view. I don't need a sniper rifle scope to see Father David enter, light a kerosene lamp, and begin nervously packing from corner to corner. I wait. An hour passes, maybe more. I don't check my watch. In an ambush, time is measured differently. The priest doesn't check his watch either, but his impatience betrays itself in the nervous habit of constantly adjusting his shirt sleeves. He's changed, no longer in clerical attire but ordinary jeans and a dark t-shirt. He no longer resembles a priest, more like an ordinary man waiting for a date. The sound of an engine breaks the forest silence. Headlights of an approaching car slice through darkness like a knife through butter. The vehicle stops beside the priest's car, and I raise the binoculars to my eyes. The door opens, and I feel the ground disappear beneath me. Rachel steps out of the car, my wife. For the first second, I refuse to believe my eyes. It's some mistake, coincidence, hallucination of an exhausted mind. But no, it's her. In jeans and a leather jacket I've never seen before, with hair flowing loose over her shoulders, not neatly tucked into a bun as usual. I barely recognize this woman. David emerges from the cabin and they meet halfway. Without greetings, without words, she hands him a folder with papers. He quickly reviews them, nodding. An ordinary business meeting. Then he takes her face in his hands and kisses her. Not a fleeting kiss on the cheek, not a friendly greeting. A long, deep kiss of a man who intimately knows every curve of those lips. And she responds, with hunger, with passion, with that intimate trembling I thought belonged only to me. I feel something inside me contract and tear, but my hands remain steady, my grip on the binoculars firm. A sniper has no right to emotions during a mission. I'm here not as a husband, I'm here as an observer. They enter the cabin. Through the imperfectly drawn curtains, I see silhouettes in the warm light of the kerosene lamp. First they sit at the table, continuing to discuss papers. Then the papers fly to the floor and Rachel ends up in his arms. Clothing falls to the floor piece by piece. I force myself to watch, force myself to see how her hands glide over his body, how they merge into one on the old bed by the window. This isn't just sex. It's the intimacy of people who know each other well, who have studied each other's bodies down to the smallest details. Strangely, I feel no rage, only coldness spreading from my heart to my extremities. Coldness and remarkable clarity of mind, like a wounded soldier experiences in the first seconds after being shot. I take several photographs, not out of revenge or jealousy, from professional habit of documenting anything that might prove useful later. Then I observe as they finish and return to the papers scattered on the floor. Now they discuss something serious, their faces concentrated, hands occasionally pointing to some diagrams. For 3 hours I lie motionless, watching this scene. Then Rachel prepares to leave. Another long kiss at the door, more of these unfamiliar gestures of intimacy between them. She leaves first. I descend the hill and run to my car, taking a shortcut through the forest. Years of service taught me to move silently, even in complete darkness. 20 minutes later, I'm home, in our bedroom. When Rachel returns, I pretend to be asleep. I listen to her moving quietly around the room, to water running in the shower. When she lies down beside me, her body emits the scent of soap and shampoo, but beneath it I detect the faint aroma of unfamiliar cologne and the smell of sex that doesn't wash away with an ordinary shower. Her hand slides along my back. "Jack, are you asleep?" she whispers. I emit a quiet snore and roll over to the other side, moving away from her. Don't trust my voice. Don't trust myself. Apparently, I don't know the woman who's shared my bed for 4 years at all. 2. The roadside cafe, Green Outpost, sits halfway between our town and Seattle. A place busy enough that two men meeting won't attract attention, but not so crowded that someone might accidentally overhear their conversation. Brian waits for me at a corner table, a large man with perpetual tan and weathered skin. We served together in the 2nd Platoon in Kandahar. He was a machine gunner, I was a sniper. Twice I covered his ass, once he dragged me out from under fire. Such things forge bonds that neither time nor distance can break. "You look like shit, Harper," he says instead of a greeting when I sit opposite him. "Like you've been chasing ghosts all night." "Close enough," I reply, ordering coffee from a passing waitress. I take an envelope from my inner pocket and slide it across the table. Brian doesn't open it immediately. First, he surveys the cafe, making sure no one's watching us. Old habit, good habit. Only then does he open the envelope and quickly scan the photographs I took last night. No emotions on his face. We both learned to hide them long ago. "Your wife?" he asks, though he already knows the answer. He met Rachel at our wedding. "Yes." "Shit happens, brother," he says, returning the envelope. "But that's not why you called me here, right?" "Not just that, I need information on the priest, real information." "You have anything besides the name?" I pull out a second envelope, with copies of church documents I secretly photographed while browsing the parish registry under the pretext of checking service schedules. David Reynolds, supposedly from the Los Angeles Diocese, transferred to our parish 3 months ago. No other information, but his accent. I'd say Spanish or South American. Brian whistles. "And mafiosos with the name Santos are looking for him. That's no coincidence, Jack. That's a fucking alarm bell." He orders more coffee and looks me straight in the eyes. "It's not just about the priest, is it? It's personal." I nod. Brian's smart enough to connect the dots. "What are you planning to do?" he asks. "First learn the truth. And then I'll decide." We both know what this means. There are problems that require permanent solutions. I solved such problems in Kandahar, and I can solve them here if necessary. "I'll make inquiries," says Brian. "Just keep your head cool, Harper. Don't do anything stupid." He pauses. "And remember, if this guy is connected to Santos, he's dangerous, very dangerous." After Brian leaves, I notice a familiar face at a distant table. Miguel, the thin Spaniard, one of the trio that watched the range. He carefully pretends to be absorbed in his breakfast, but I see how his eyes furtively follow me. I pay and deliberately walk past his table, feigned clumsiness, and I drop a napkin right at his feet. Bending to pick it up, I overhear his hushed phone conversation. "She era ale, el americano." Yes, it was him, the American. "Ha hecho preguntas. Está buscando." He's been asking questions. He's looking. I don't catch more. Miguel notices me and abruptly switches to English, saying something about the weather. But it's enough. They're watching me just as I'm watching them. Leaving the cafe, I spot his car, the same dark blue Chrysler. Instead of heading home, I drive in the opposite direction, knowing he'll follow. Indeed, in the rearview mirror I see him hurriedly exiting the cafe and getting into his car. I drive slowly, allowing him to follow. 15 minutes later, we're in the neighboring town, and I choose the road to the Blue Pine Motel, an old roadside establishment I've never visited. Driving past, I slow down enough to notice two familiar faces in the parking lot. The elder, Eduardo Santos, stands at the entrance to one of the rooms. Next to him, the hulking Marco, smoking a cigarette. They exchange brief phrases with some local policeman. Now I know where the Spaniards are staying, and I have a feeling the police won't help me if things go badly. 3. Brian's call comes the next day. Not to my regular phone, to an old prepaid mobile I kept from my service days, when we didn't trust standard communication channels. "Are you alone?" he asks without preamble. "Yes, at the range, no one around." "Good, listen carefully." Brian's voice drops to a whisper. "Information is very scarce and I can't vouch for its accuracy, but according to my contacts, your priest might be Marcos Valencia." "Who is he?" "Former hitman for a Colombian cartel, specifically the Ortega family from Bogota. 6 years ago he crossed paths with the Santos clan, stealing some valuable item. Details are murky, but apparently it's about some religious artifact that belonged to the Santos family." I recall Rachel's conversation about the valuable relic in church. Puzzle pieces begin falling into place. "Valencia disappeared from the radar," Brian continues. "Rumors circulated that he provided information to the DEA in exchange for protection, but the witness protection program was compromised, and he officially vanished. Possibly started using the church as cover." "And the woman with him?" A pause. Brian hesitates. "Even less information on that. There are mentions of a woman named Gabriella, possibly his girlfriend or accomplice, but no photographs, no specific data." "I see," I say, processing the information. "Jack, I strongly recommend contacting the FBI. If this man is indeed Valencia and Santos is hunting him, the situation could become very dangerous." "I'll think about it," I reply, though I already know I won't. At least not until I understand what role Rachel plays in all this. "Don't wait too long," concern evident in Brian's voice. "And be careful, very careful." After our conversation, I drive home, but halfway there I notice a black sedan following me too persistently. Behind the wheel, Marco, the bull-necked brute from Santos' entourage. He's not even trying to hide his surveillance, staying just 2 cars behind me. I calmly drive past the turn to my house and head for an old industrial road leading to abandoned warehouses. The road is deserted and Marco closes the gap. He doesn't know I've spotted him. Doesn't know I've studied this road thoroughly. I often practice extreme driving here. I suddenly accelerate, then at full speed execute a maneuver we called fishtail, a sharp 180-degree turn with simultaneous switching off and on of headlights. For a second Marco loses sight of me, and when he spots me again, I'm already racing in the opposite direction. He tries to repeat the maneuver, but his car spins out of control, crashing into a roadside ditch. I don't stop to check on him. At such speed, the accident is unlikely to be serious, but it will give me the necessary head start. I drive circuitous routes, zigzagging through town alleys, making sure no one follows. Finally deciding I've covered my tracks sufficiently, I return to the town center. Passing the church, I see Rachel exiting through the side door. It's 2 in the afternoon. Usually at this time she's working at the library. I stop far enough away that she won't notice me and observe. Rachel glances around nervously as if afraid someone might be watching her. Her movements are sharp, anxious. She gets into her car and drives toward home. I don't follow her. Right now I need to check something at the church. 4. The Blue Pine Motel stands unremarkable among thousands of similar establishments across America. Cracked asphalt parking lot, faded sign, endless hum of soda and ice machines. Perfect place for people who don't want to be noticed. I park half a block from the motel, at a diner's lot. I retrieve a baseball cap and sunglasses from the glove compartment, minimal disguise to avoid attracting attention. Then I take from the back seat a bag with equipment extracted from my old army footlocker. The bag contains a compact but powerful telephoto lens for my camera, a directional microphone, and a small digital recorder. Tools from another life, but they still work. I find a position in a small park opposite the motel, sit on a bench, and pretend to read a newspaper. In reality, I'm watching the door of the room where the Spaniards are staying, waiting. After 40 minutes, a police car appears. The same young officer I saw earlier, not older than 30, with an arrogant smile, steps out. He knocks on the door of the room in question. Eduardo Santos opens it. They exchange handshakes and the officer hands him an envelope. Santos extracts a thin stack of banknotes from his pocket and gives it to the officer. He nods, shakes the Spaniard's hand, and drives away. The entire exchange takes less than a minute. I take several photos. Might be useful if pressure on local police becomes necessary. Corrupt cops aren't rare even in small towns. An hour later, Santos emerges from the room, alone without his henchmen. He gets into the Chrysler and drives away. I follow at a safe distance. He heads downtown, stops at the local bank, goes inside, comes out 15 minutes later, then drives to a jewelry store, a small establishment owned by old Mr. Jenkins, who buys and sells antiques and jewelry. I stop across the street, within viewing range but outside Santos' field of vision. Through the store window, I see him talking to Jenkins, showing him some photograph. The old man's face changes dramatically, from typical friendly expression to a mixture of surprise and reverence. Whatever's in the photo, it made a strong impression on Jenkins. I photographed this scene, though the image in Santos' hands remains a mystery to me. When Santos leaves, I don't follow him. Instead, I head to the range to gather my thoughts and check the surveillance cameras. I installed them after buying the place as a simple security measure. Approaching the range, I notice the door ajar. I distinctly remember locking it before leaving. Instinctively, my hand reaches for the pistol under my jacket. Inside, traces of a hasty search. Nothing stolen, but the desk drawers in the office are pulled out, document folders mixed up. Someone was looking for something and didn't particularly care about hiding their presence. I check the surveillance camera recording. It clearly shows Marco and Miguel entering through the back door, using some primitive lock-picking tool. They methodically search the office, examining every document, reviewing every folder. Judging by their gestures, they didn't find what they were looking for. Interesting, what exactly were they hoping to find? Something related to the priest, or something related to me? 5. I returned to the hunting cabin that same evening, this time with full surveillance equipment. Directional microphone capable of picking up conversations through glass. Night vision device allowing clear distinction of silhouettes in darkness. Recorder for documentation. I again take position on the hill. I don't have to wait long. This is clearly their regular meeting place. Rachel arrives first, the priest, 10 minutes later. They enter the cabin, and I adjust the microphone toward the window where the curtains aren't fully drawn. Sound quality isn't perfect, but sufficient to make out most of the conversation. "Too risky," says Rachel. Her voice sounds different than usual, harsher, with a slight accent I've never noticed before. "Santos is already in town. They could find us at any moment." "We still have time," the priest replies, nervousness evident in his voice. "The charity gala is in 3 days. We'll take the relic and disappear. And if something goes wrong, then we have a backup plan, as always." Through the gap in the curtains, I see them moving around the room. Rachel nervously paces from corner to corner. The priest sits at the table, sorting through papers. Then she approaches him from behind, embraces him, kisses his neck. He turns to her. "We're almost there, Gabby," he says, using a name I've never heard. "Just a little longer and we'll be free." "If only your suicidal plan works," she replies bitterly. "It will work if there are no interruptions." They start kissing, and for a minute the conversation ceases. I wait, trying not to think about what I'm seeing and hearing, trying to remain professional, not a jealous husband. When they finally pull apart, the priest says something that makes my blood freeze. He's too observant, Gabby. If problems start, he'll figure everything out. We need to eliminate him before things get too hot here. You're talking about killing my husband. Rachel's voice sounds tense. Are you insane? We never went that far. What do you suggest? Wait until he figures everything out, or until Santos finds us. Choose either him or us. A heavy pause hangs in the air. I see Rachel turn away, approach the window. For a moment I think she's looking directly at me, though I know that's impossible. I'm well camouflaged, and in the darkness she can't see an observer on the hill. Fine, she finally says, but we do it clean, no traces, no blood. As always, the priest approaches her, embraces her from behind. You know I hate blood. I know, she turns to him. Our last job, then new names, new life, you and me like we always dreamed. You know I love only you, he says, kissing her forehead. He was just cover like all the others. They discuss plan details but speak more quietly, and the microphone catches only fragments of phrases. Something about sleeping pills in wine, about an accident, about how no one will look for evidence because everyone will think it's a suicide of a veteran with PTSD. Me. They're planning to kill me. At this moment, I realize my life is no longer my own property. It has become currency in someone else's game. Six. I return home before Rachel and immediately begin searching. Don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but I'm certain. In this house must be evidence of her double life. I start with the most obvious, her clothing drawers. Nothing. Then check all possible hiding places, behind pictures, under floorboards, behind baseboards. Nothing. Then I remember an old suitcase she keeps in the attic. Sentimental things, she said once when I asked about it. Family memories. The suitcase is locked, but the lock is primitive. I open it in seconds, using skills acquired during service. Inside the suitcase, neatly folded clothes. Beneath them, a solid false bottom. I pry it open with a knife and it yields, revealing a hidden compartment. What I find there finally shatters any illusions about the woman I married. Passports, not one, not two, a whole stack. Different names, different countries, but all with her face. Gabriella Morty, Anna Costa, Rachel Harper. How many more names has she had? Among the documents, a marriage certificate. Not ours. In it, Gabriella Morty and Marcos Valencia are declared husband and wife. The date, 3 years before our own wedding. The certificate looks authentic, with seals and signatures. Deeper in the hiding place, a plan of some building. I unfold it and realize it's a detailed diagram of our church with a marked cache under the altar. Next to the plan, photographs of some medallion with precious stones. The same one Rachel mentioned. The relic the Santos are seeking. The next discovery makes me freeze. A whole stack of photographs, Rachel and the priest together. Not just together as lovers, as a couple. In Venice, in Rome, in Barcelona. The images span years. In some they're quite young, she barely 20. In others, as I know them now, years-long relationship, not a casual affair. At the bottom of the hiding place, encrypted notes and a phone I've never seen before. I need time to crack the password, but when I do, I find dozens of messages between her and the priest. They're full of code words and references I don't fully understand, but the general meaning is clear. They're planning some major job, after which they'll disappear forever. The last job, she writes in one message. Then just you and me, as it always should have been. I sit on the attic floor, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, feeling a strange numbness. Part of me wants to scream, break things, seek immediate revenge. But the stronger part, the soldier who survived the hell of Kandahar, analyzes the situation with cold clarity. My wife is not who I thought she was. She and her lover planned to steal something valuable from the church. then kill me and disappear. The Spanish mafia hunts them both over some relic they may have stolen earlier. And I found myself at the center of this storm, unaware of its existence until yesterday. I carefully return everything to its place, trying not to leave traces of my search. Then I descend to the bedroom and wait, sitting in darkness. My phone vibrates, incoming call. The screen displays Foster, FBI. I don't know any Foster, but the abbreviation itself makes me tense. At that moment, I hear the key turning in the front door lock. Rachel has returned home. Chapter 3: Truth and Fire. 1. I meet Agent Foster in the city park, where at 5 in the morning there's no one except elderly dog walkers and early rising joggers. He finds me easily. I sit on a bench near the pond, with a newspaper and coffee cup, an ordinary man on a morning walk. You wouldn't even notice the slight bulge under the jacket where the pistol hides. "Jack Harper?" he asks, sitting beside me. Doesn't wait for an answer, doesn't extend his hand for a handshake. Professional. Nathan Foster is about 15 years my senior, with gray streaks in his short-cropped black hair and a penetrating, evaluating gaze. His suit is impeccably pressed, though dawn has barely broken. On his lapel, a tiny American flag pin, and under his jacket undoubtedly hides exactly the same bulge as mine. "Sometimes the world is too small," he says instead of a greeting. "You don't remember me, but we've met. Kandahar, Operation Phantom. You were the sniper covering the southeast perimeter." And then I do recognize him, intelligence officer who worked with our platoon during the city clearing. He sat in the most dangerous position, on the roof of a hospital that had become bait for terrorists. We held that roof for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. 6 hours of pure hell. "I remember," I nod. "You worked for CIA or State Department?" "Both of them, now FBI," he smiles slightly. "That's how it goes. If you survive long enough, you eventually find your place." "What brings the feds to our town?" He takes a thin folder from his inner pocket and hands it to me. Inside, photographs of Father David, but not in clerical attire. In the images, he wears a business suit, casual clothes, a police uniform, and always beside him a woman. Not always Rachel, sometimes blonde, sometimes redhead, but I recognize her by the gaze unmistakably. "Marcos Valencia and Gabriella Morty," says Foster. "Not a cartel hitman, as your military friends thought, but a talented pair of con artists specializing in thefts from Catholic churches." "But why churches?" "Because they have almost no security. Because servants of God rarely suspect deception from other servants. And because Catholic temples worldwide house items worth outrageous sums." He pulls out more photographs, churches in various American cities. The scheme is always the same. He infiltrates the parish posing as a new priest. She plays the role of a pious parishioner, marries someone respected in town to avoid suspicion. Together they gain the pastor's trust, study the security system, choose the moment for theft, and vanish. 5 states, 7 thefts, total damage exceeding $4 million. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. My marriage, our life together, her touches, her glances. Was it all part of a con? Was I used as a cover for crimes? "And how long have they been together?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "According to our data, about 12 years. Lovers and partners." Foster looks at me with unexpected sympathy. "Here's what's strange about this story, Harper. Previously, they never planned murders. Marcos once shot a guard during a robbery in Naples, but it was an accident, a panic reaction. Since then, apparently, he's had problems with firearms. We've noticed he avoids even mentions of shooting." "Then why now?" "Probably the situation has become more dangerous than usual. Santos is no joke. If they're hunting Valencia and Morty, we're talking about something bigger than an ordinary theft." I tell him about the overheard conversation, the murder plan, the discovered documents. Foster listens without interrupting. I need to arrest them, he says when I finish. Today, before they can execute their plan or escape. No, I shake my head. First, we need to understand what connects them to Santos. If we arrest them now, Santos will simply disappear, then emerge somewhere else and continue the hunt. Or worse, start taking revenge on innocents. Foster studies me carefully. From his gaze, I understand. He's assessing how well I control my emotions, how soberly I can think despite the betrayal. You suggest using them as bait for Santos. I suggest using everyone as bait for everyone, I reply, and figuring out what relic stands at the center of this story. 2. Foster drives his inconspicuous Ford down deserted morning streets. We're heading to the local library, the only place where we might find information about our church and its history. You sure it's wise leaving her unobserved? He asks, meaning Rachel. She might escape while we're gone. She won't run, I reply, watching roadside trees blurring past the window. The charity gala is tomorrow. They won't leave empty-handed, and for the theft they need to wait for this evening. We park a block from the library and enter through the back door. Old Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, always leaves it open for early visitors. Foster looks out of place here, in his pressed suit among dusty old books. First, we need to understand exactly what they want to steal, I say, heading to shelves with local history literature. After an hour of active research, we have a general picture. Our St. Michael's Church was built in 1892 by Irish immigrants, a modest building with a not wealthy parish. Until recently, nothing particularly valuable was kept there: ordinary church utensils, several old icons of local significance. But 2 months ago, the situation changed. Here, Foster points to an article in the local newspaper. St. Francis Medallion will be exhibited at St. Michael's Church for 3 months as part of a traveling exhibition of religious relics. The article mentions that the medallion dates back to the 16th century and contains precious stones donated to Pope Leo X by an Italian aristocratic family. There's no photograph of the relic, only a vague description. Gold setting with rubies and emeralds, in the center, a particle of St. Francis of Assisi's relics. Sounds valuable enough to hunt for, I comment. Not just valuable, Foster looks thoughtful. If this is the medallion I'm thinking of, its collector and religious value is immeasurable. It was considered lost during World War II. But then rumors emerged that the medallion ended up in a private collection. The Santos family, I guess. Exactly. 5 years ago, several valuable items were stolen from their villa in Majorca. No official police report was filed, unsurprising for a mafia family. But in our circles, rumors circulated about the heist of the century and a stolen religious relic that had been kept by the Santos for decades. The picture gradually comes together. So that's what happened. Valencia and Morty stole the medallion from Santos 5 years ago, then presumably sold it to some collector. And now, when the relic turned up in our church as part of an exhibition, they decided to steal it again. Perhaps they found a new buyer who will pay more. And Santos somehow learned where the medallion is and traced it to your town, Foster continues. Now they want to recover their property and take revenge for the humiliation. And the con artists and the mafia will converge tomorrow at the charity gala, I nod. Perfect time for theft, many visitors, commotion. No one will notice extra people near the altar. Foster drums his fingers on the table. Now it's clear why they're so nervous, and why they suddenly decided to commit murder. Santos aren't people you can joke with if they find Valencia and Morty. There won't be anything left of them, I finish for him. We sit silently for a while, processing the situation. I have a plan, I finally say. We'll use the charity gala to catch everyone at once. Valencia with his golden hands, my loving wife, and the Spaniards with their vendetta. And how do you propose to do that? We'll give them all what they want, The con artists, a chance to commit theft. Santos, a meeting with those who robbed them, and will be waiting for the perfect moment to spring the trap. Foster looks at me with new respect. Risky plan, but it might work, he pauses. However, we'll need backup. I'll call in a team from Seattle. Only the most reliable people, I insist. I don't trust local police, saw them communicating with Santos. Agreed, Foster nods. The team will consist of federal agents only, but be prepared that your wife and her lover might not live to see trial if Santos gets to them first. I don't answer, looking at the photograph of the church in an old book, a small white building with a simple spire, similar to thousands of other American churches. Who would have thought it would become the arena for such drama? 3. Foster and I work on the plan in that same abandoned hunting cabin where I saw Rachel with her lover. It's strange, sitting at the same table where they discussed my murder, planning their arrest. Who would have thought life would take such a turn? I notice small details I missed during my surveillance. An earring rolled under the bed silver with a small emerald. I've never seen it on Rachel. Perhaps she wears it only for him. In the ashtray, cigarette butts with lipstick imprints. On the table, a couple of glasses with traces of red wine. Foster spreads the church plan we found in the city archive on the table, more detailed than the one stored in Rachel's hiding place. Here's what we know, he says, marking key points on the plan with a red marker. The medallion is displayed in a special case to the right of the altar. During the charity gala, visitors will pass by it in procession. There's no security as such, only an elderly sexton who oversees order. Father David, as a priest, has access to the display case. I continue his thought. It costs him nothing to open it under some pretext and replace the medallion with a copy that imitates the relic at a cursory glance. And Rachel, as the event organizer, can provide a distraction. That's exactly how they operated in other churches, Foster nods. Perfect tandem, but Santos complicates the situation. We mark possible escape routes on the plan, positions for FBI agents, potential blind spots. Consider every detail, every possible turn of events. Rachel shouldn't be harmed, I say suddenly, surprising myself. Foster raises his eyes to me. In his gaze, understanding and a strange mixture of sympathy and professional concern. You still have feelings for her. This isn't a question but a statement. No, I reply, but it's a lie and we both know it. I just don't want everything to end in bloodshed. She deserves trial and prison, not a bullet from Santos. Foster sighs and sits across from me, setting aside the marker. Listen, Jack, I understand what you're feeling. Betrayal by a loved one is one of the most painful things a man can experience. But you must understand and accept the truth. She's not who you thought she was. She was never your wife, just Marco's lover. All these years she played a role, preparing for the moment when she could use you and disappear. His words hit me like bullets. Rationally, I know he's right. But my heart refuses to accept that all our shared breakfasts, all quiet evenings with books by the fireplace, all moments of intimacy were merely a game on her part. I know, I reply, not meeting his eyes, but that doesn't mean I want to see her dead. All right, he nods. We'll do everything possible to ensure the safety of all operation participants, but you must be prepared for the situation to spiral out of control. At that moment, Foster's phone beeps, signaling a new message. He reads it and frowns. My people report that Santos has started moving actively. They've rented a room at a motel closer to the church, ordered an additional car, preparing for some action. They plan to intercept the relic immediately after the theft, I suggest. Or even earlier, if they suspect Valencia and Morty are planning to flee. Foster nods. We must be ready for any scenario. Before leaving, he hands me a small case. Here's a bug for installation at home and a pistol with a silencer. This isn't standard issue, it can't be traced. He looks me straight in the eyes. I hope it won't be needed, but if Santos tries to get to you or your wife before we can intervene. He doesn't finish the phrase, no need. Thank you, I simply say, taking the case. Be careful, Jack. And remember, sometimes what we consider love is actually just habit or fear of loneliness. With these words he leaves, leaving me alone with the church plan and ghosts in the abandoned cabin. 4. In the evening I return home as usual. Rachel's car is in the driveway. Warm light glows in the windows. The aroma of roast wafts from the kitchen. Everything as always, as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. Now I view our house through different eyes. Every corner, every item seems fake, props on a movie set depicting someone else's life. A life I never actually had. "You're late," says Rachel when I enter the kitchen. She stands by the stove, stirring something in a pot. Hair tied back in a bun, wearing simple home clothes. My wife. The woman with whom I've shared a bed for 4 years. The woman planning to kill me. "Sorry, got held up at the range. Lots of paperwork," I lie easily, approaching her and kissing her cheek, as I've done hundreds of times before. "Smells delicious." "Beef stew with vegetables, your favorite," she smiles. "And a bottle of that red you enjoyed last time." Wine she plans to mix with sleeping pills, or a more sophisticated, undetectable poison. I smile back. "Sounds wonderful. Give me 5 minutes to change." I go upstairs to the bedroom, quickly change my shirt, then return to the kitchen. Rachel is setting the table, 2 place settings, candles, wine bottle already opened and breathing. We sit down and she pours wine into glasses. I discreetly observe her hands. No strange movements, no additives. But perhaps the poison is already in the bottle. "To us," she raises her glass. "To us," I echo, but don't drink. Just touch the rim of the glass to my lips, mimicking a sip. Rachel doesn't notice the substitution. She drinks her wine and I understand. There's no poison in the bottle. She wouldn't risk poisoning herself. While she's distracted, taking a baking sheet with bread from the oven, I discreetly place the bug under the table. A tiny electronic device, practically invisible unless you know where to look. "You seem tense today," Rachel observes, returning to the table. "Did something happen?" "Just fatigue," I reply. "So much going on. The range, license problems, soon this charity gala." "Don't worry about the gala," she covers my hand with hers. "I've organized everything. You just need to show up, look presentable, and maintain polite conversation." "Isn't that what I always do?" I smile. "Stand around looking pretty while you shine." "You do much more than that, Jack." Her voice sounds unexpectedly sincere. "You give me stability, a sense of security, a home." I wonder how much truth is in these words. How many times has she said similar things to men before disappearing with their money or using them as cover for another scam? "I love you," she says, looking me straight in the eyes. Here it is, the moment of truth. Can I convincingly lie? Can I play the role of an unsuspecting husband when everything inside me is turning upside down from the awareness of her betrayal? "I love you too," I say, and I'm surprised at how truthful it sounds. After dinner, Rachel becomes more playful. She approaches me from behind as I load the dishwasher, embraces me, kisses my neck. "Maybe we should go upstairs," she whispers in my ear. "We haven't had a real evening together in a long time." Just yesterday I would have followed her to the bedroom without hesitation. But today, after all I've learned, "I'd love to," I say, turning to her. "But I'm completely exhausted tonight. Maybe we just turn in early and get a good night's sleep before tomorrow's gala." A shadow of incomprehension and possibly suspicion flashes across her face, but quickly gives way to a smile of understanding. "Of course, darling, I'll go take a shower." She goes upstairs, and soon I hear water running in the bathroom. I remain in the kitchen, checking the bug's operation. Everything functions normally, Foster should hear every word spoken in this room. I'm about to go upstairs when I notice movement in the driveway, a shadow flickering by the window, then another, and another. My heart begins beating faster. My hand automatically reaches for the pistol under my jacket. A moment later, the front door crashes open, kicked in with one powerful blow. All three Spaniards burst into the house with weapons ready. "Don't move," commands Eduardo Santos, pointing his pistol at me. His voice is cold, lacking anger or excitement, just the businesslike cadence of a man for whom violence has become routine. "Where's the priest? Where's the relic?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I reply, raising my hands. "I'm just—" "Don't lie to me," he cuts me off. "We know your wife and this fake priest are together. We know they stole our property, and we know tomorrow they plan to steal it again." Marco and Miguel separate, beginning to search the house. One heads toward the stairs leading to the second floor, where Rachel is showering. The other checks the kitchen and living room, methodically opening every cabinet, every drawer. "Listen," I say, trying to sound calm. "I really don't know what you mean. I'm just a shooting instructor." "Who's married to a thief," Santos finishes. "Who allows his wife to fuck a fake priest? Or are you so stupid you notice nothing?" His words hit their mark. Rage rises within me, but I contain it. Now is not the time for emotions. I must act coolly if I want to survive. From upstairs comes Rachel's scream. She's noticed Marco. Sounds of struggle, something falls and breaks. "Bring her here," orders Santos, not taking his eyes off me. "And be careful, that bitch is more dangerous than she looks." 5. Rachel appears on the stairs, wet from the shower, hastily wrapped in a towel. Marco roughly pushes her forward, pointing a pistol at her back. In her eyes, a mixture of terror and fury, a red mark on her cheek from a slap. "Are you all right?" I ask, though I know she'll lie in response anyway. "Jack, this is some misunderstanding," she replies in a trembling voice. "These men broke in." "Enough," Santos interrupts her. "Your husband knows everything about you and the priest, about your plans, about the medallion." Rachel pales, shifting her gaze from Santos to me. I see her brain frantically processing information, trying to find a way out of the situation. "Jack, don't listen to him," she tries. "I can explain." "You'll explain later," I say, not taking my eyes off Santos. "Right now I need to deal with our uninvited guests." One last time, Santos steps forward, his pistol now aimed at my face. "Where's the priest? Where's the relic?" I could tell him the truth, could explain that the medallion is still in church and the priest is probably at his home or parish. But I'm not that stupid. As soon as they get the information, Rachel and I will become unnecessary witnesses. "I don't know," I say firmly. Santos sighs with feigned regret. "Pity, we'll have to talk more persuasively." He nods to Marco, who grabs Rachel by the hair and presses his pistol to her temple. "Last chance," says Santos, "or your pretty wife gets a bullet in the head." At this moment, Rachel makes an unexpected move. She doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't try to break free. Instead, she sharply elbows Marco in the solar plexus, simultaneously intercepting his hand with the gun. The movement is so quick and professional that I momentarily freeze in amazement. Taking advantage of Santos' momentary confusion, I lunge forward, knocking him down. We fall to the floor, locked in a struggle for the pistol. From the corner of my eye, I see Rachel twisting Marco's arm, forcing him to release his weapon. Miguel draws his pistol but can't immediately fire. Santos and I are rolling on the floor, and he fears hitting his boss. I manage to twist Santos' arm and direct the pistol away. A shot rings out, the bullet embeds in the wall. I knee him in the groin, then elbow his face. The pistol falls from his hand and skitters under the table. Meanwhile, Rachel has engaged in combat with Miguel. The towel has fallen, but this doesn't embarrass her. She fights fiercely and skillfully, like a professional fighter. Who is this woman? I've never seen her like this. The sound of breaking glass draws my attention. Marco has smashed a window and is trying to escape. I begin to realize the situation is spiraling out of control. Santos, taking advantage of my momentary distraction, punches me in the face. I taste blood in my mouth. He tries to reach for a knife in his boot, but I intercept his hand and twist his wrist until it cracks. He screams in pain. At this moment, the door flies open again, and Foster bursts in with pistol ready. "FBI, everyone on the floor," he shouts. But Santos isn't going to surrender. With his free hand, he draws a knife and lunges at Foster. The agent fires, but the bullet only grazes Santos, who still manages to reach Foster and plunge the knife into his shoulder. Foster falls, his pistol clattering away. Santos already prepares to deliver a fatal blow, but I manage to knock him down. We grapple again, rolling across the floor amidst broken furniture. Somehow we end up in the kitchen. Santos reaches for the carving knives on the counter, but I beat him to it, grabbing a heavy cast iron skillet. One precise blow, and he drops unconscious. I return to the living room to help Foster and check on Rachel. But instead of a fight, I see only the wounded FBI agent trying to staunch the bleeding from his shoulder. "Where is she?" I ask, looking around. "Escaped," Foster winces in pain. "Through the bathroom window, jumped out when the shooting started." I feel a pang of disappointment. Even now, knowing who she is, part of me hoped Rachel would stay, that she would choose me over escape. And the second Spaniard. Also gone. Foster presses a crumpled towel to his wound. But at least we got the leader. I help Foster bandage his wound, then tie up the unconscious Eduardo Santos. Miguel has vanished, but Marco lies on the lawn in front of the house. Apparently, he jumped awkwardly from the window and twisted his ankle. I go out and tie him up too. My house has become a battlefield. Broken furniture, kicked-in doors, glass shards everywhere. Blood on the floor. Mine, Foster's, the Spaniard's, but not Rachel's. She managed to escape without a scratch. "You okay?" asks Foster, noticing me surveying the destruction. "As much as possible," I reply, feeling my aching jaw. "But we lost her." "We'll find them," Foster says confidently, taking out his phone and calling for backup. "Perhaps sooner than you think." Six. Backup arrives 15 minutes later, two unmarked cars with FBI agents. They take Santos and Marco, provide first aid to Foster. "Nothing serious," says the medic, examining the agent's wound. "The blade missed the artery, but you need to go to the hospital for a more thorough examination." "Later," Foster waves dismissively. "First, we need to finish the operation." I inspect the house, trying to understand where Rachel might have gone. In the upstairs bathroom, the window is broken through which she escaped. On the windowsill, drops of blood. So she did get injured after all. Her clothes have disappeared from the closet, as has a small travel bag she always kept ready for trips. I return downstairs, where Foster is on the phone, giving orders to his people. "Set up surveillance on the church and the priest's house," he says. "They might try to steal the relic today, not waiting for the charity gala." He listens to the response, then sighs. "Understood, continue the search." Finishing the call, he turns to me. "Bad news. The priest's house is empty, he's gone, and he's not at the church either." "They're preparing to flee," I say. "After what happened here, they realized Santos found them and decided not to wait until tomorrow." At that moment, Foster's phone rings. He answers, listens for several seconds, then changes expression. "When?" He looks at his watch. "And nobody saw anything. Understood, we're on our way." He ends the call and gives me a grim look. "Just received a call from the church pastor. Someone broke into the temple and stole the golden church vessels and St. Francis medallion." "Damn," I exhale, "they beat us to it." "Apparently so." Foster winces from pain, trying to stand. "Need to organize searches on all roads out of town. They won't leave by main roads. I shake my head. There are old forest paths leading to abandoned sawmills in the mountains. Local teenagers use them for picnics and parties away from parental eyes. If they know about these paths, can you find these sawmills? Of course, I've hunted in those areas for years. Foster tries to stand, but his face contorts with pain. You're not going anywhere, the medic examining his wound says firmly. You need to go to the hospital. He's right, I nod. I'll go alone. It's too dangerous, objects Foster. Valencia and your wife are professional criminals, and somewhere out there Miguel is still roaming. I have no choice, I reply, checking the silenced pistol he gave me earlier. By the time reinforcements arrive, they'll be far from here. I know these places better than anyone. I'll find them. Foster hesitates, then decisively nods. All right, but stay in touch, and don't take unnecessary risks. I retrieve my sniper rifle from the safe in the basement. My old faithful rifle that accompanied me through 3 deployments. I hope I won't need it, but better safe than sorry. When I leave the house, Foster is already being loaded into an ambulance. FBI agents bustle around, organizing searches for the fugitives. Jack, Foster calls me from the ambulance. Remember, this is no longer your wife. She's a criminal who used you and planned your murder. I nod without saying a word. I don't need reminders. I know who Rachel is. I know who she never was. I get into my truck and drive onto the road leading to the mountains. Rain begins drumming on the roof, like an accompaniment to my dark thoughts. This is between me and them. It's my duty to finish what I started, to find the woman who betrayed me and the man for whom she did it. And if I'm right about the sawmills, I know where to look for them. Chapter 4, The Final Shot. 1. My shoulder bleeds, but I feel no pain. Adrenaline, the best painkiller, and rage, the best stimulant. I drive my truck down the dark forest road, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turn white. Rain hammers the roof, wind gusts throw wet leaves against the windshield. Wipers work at full capacity, but visibility remains poor. In my jacket pocket lies a dressing pack that the FBI medic thrust at me before departure. The bullet merely grazed my shoulder, nothing serious. In Kandahar, I saw men going into battle with more serious wounds. The road turns to dirt, ruts filled with water, but my 4-wheel drive truck confidently conquers the softened mud. A couple more miles along this abandoned logging trail, and I'll have to abandon the vehicle and continue on foot. Better save my shoulder until then. I know where they're heading. The old sawmill, a perfect place to hide for a while. An abandoned complex of 3 buildings that burrow deep into the mountainside, remnants of wooden structures, concrete platforms for machinery, all lost among the dense forest. Local teenagers once drove there to drink beer and do what teenagers typically do away from parental eyes. Then one of them broke his leg falling through rotten floorboards, and the place acquired a bad reputation. Now only hunters like me or desperate tourists who have lost their way venture there. Tire tracks in the wet earth confirm my guess. Rachel and her lover clearly passed through here very recently, though lover isn't quite the right word. According to what Foster said and the photographs I found, they were together long before Rachel met me. I was just convenient cover, part of their con. This fact wounds deeper than a bullet. 4 years of marriage, 4 years of shared beds, breakfasts, talks about the future. And it was all a lie. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I love you," while thinking of another. She smiled at me and planned how to use me in her next theft. My thoughts returned to our first meeting, a small cafe in the center of town, a rainy day much like today. She came in soaking wet, with disheveled hair, and asked for a place at my table since there were no others free. Now I understand it was a carefully planned, accidental encounter. She had probably observed me for weeks, studying my habits, my character, assessing whether I would suit their purposes. And I, like a complete idiot, fell in love with her at first sight. I suddenly recall her face yesterday evening when we dined together. She really looked happy, relaxed. Was all that an act? Every glance, every touch, every shared moment. Or maybe, somewhere between lies and betrayal, something genuine was born. I abruptly brake the truck. Water from a puddle splashes onto the windshield. Enough. Taking wishful thinking for reality is the path to the grave. In Helmand, I saw young guys die because of such sentimentality. An enemy remains an enemy, even wearing the face of a loved one. The road ahead becomes too muddy for the vehicle. I park the truck in a natural shelter behind a group of firs, retrieve a waterproof backpack from under the seat with all necessities. Sniper rifle in disassembled form, night vision device, coil of rope, water flask, knife, dressing materials. Quickly and skillfully distribute everything into jacket pockets, place the silenced pistol in a shoulder holster. The rain subsides slightly as I delve into the forest. The humid air smells of pine and wet earth. Despite the night darkness, I unerringly find the path. I've hunted in these places for years. How many nights have I spent in these forests, alone, fighting the demons of war? How many times have I searched for a deer in my scope, only to see a running Iraqi insurgent? After 40 minutes of fast but cautious movement, I see the first signs of the abandoned sawmill complex. Rusty rails, barely visible in the grass. Remains of some building's stone foundation. A rotting wooden sign with faded letters. And there's what I was looking for, metal gleaming among trees. A blue sedan parked in a crevice between rocks. Not their car, I've never seen it before. Apparently borrowed somewhere along the way. I quickly assemble the sniper rifle, attach the night vision scope, then pull binoculars from my backpack and survey the area. Silence, only the tapping of raindrops on leaves and a distant owl's cry. They're somewhere here. I feel their presence with every cell in my body, like a wolf senses prey. With methodical, practiced movements, I climb a small elevation that offers a good view of the entire sawmill area. In the recesses of a half-collapsed stone wall, I establish an observation position, camouflaging myself with branches. I peer through the binoculars and finally see them. They stand at the entrance to the central sawmill building, Rachel and the priest conman. She's changed clothes since our last encounter, now wearing practical jeans, heavy boots, and a jacket too large for her slender figure. Hair pulled into a tight ponytail. In these clothes she looks harder, more dangerous, more like a criminal than a housewife. The priest doesn't look pious either. In a black turtleneck and leather jacket, he resembles a gangster from 90s movies. In his hands, a bag, apparently containing the stolen relic. They're arguing. Even from a distance I see how tense their bodies are, how abrupt their movements. I can't hear words, but their body language is crystal clear. Conflict is escalating between them. I take the rifle, adjust the scope. Distance, about 300 yards. Light crosswind, insignificant for such a distance. Through the scope I clearly see their faces. My finger rests on the trigger, but I don't rush. First, I need to understand what's happening. 2. The argument flares with renewed vigor. Rachel points north, apparently toward the Canadian border. The priest furiously shakes his head, gesturing south, probably toward Mexico. The classic fugitive's dilemma, Canada safer but border better guarded, Mexico more dangerous but easier to cross. Their voices now reach me, but I can't make out words, only intonations. The priest shouts, Rachel responds quietly but insistently. I see in her a completely different woman, not the soft, domestic Rachel I knew for 4 years. This woman embodies cold determination. The priest clutches the bag tighter, pressing it to his chest. He clearly doesn't trust her, doesn't want to part with the loot. The bag, obviously, is the apple of discord. I wonder how much this relic is worth. 1 million, 2, 5, enough to betray a lifelong partner, enough to risk everything. Rachel approaches the priest, places her hand on his shoulder. Her movement is soothing, almost tender. Their faces now so close I expect to see a kiss. Instead, she whispers something in his ear, affectionately, intimately. Then she smiles. I clearly see this smile through the scope. The very same smile she bestowed on me every morning. The smile that made me believe happiness still existed in the world even after all the horrors I'd witnessed. The priest relaxes, drops his shoulders. They embrace, a long, tight embrace of people who have been through much together. Then he pulls away, says something to her, turns his back. And at this moment, Rachel pushes him. It happens so quickly I barely have time to comprehend. One moment they're embracing, the next, the priest is already balancing on the edge of a deep pit in the mill floor, desperately waving his arms, trying to maintain balance. The bag falls to the ground. Rachel doesn't move. She simply observes. Her face, a mask of absolute calm, almost clinical interest, like an entomologist observing a beetle pinned to a board. The priest loses his battle with gravity. With a cry, he falls into the black maw of the pit. The scream echoes off the walls, gradually fading until ringing silence descends. Rachel bends down, picks up the bag, checks the contents, nods with satisfaction and zips it closed, then stands for a while at the edge of the pit, listening. No groans, no cries for help, just the quiet rustle of rain on leaves. I freeze, finger on the trigger. Now is the perfect moment for a shot. She stands motionless, turned to me in profile, an ideal target. But something holds me back. Not sentimentality, not remnants of love, rather professional curiosity. I want to know what she'll do next. Want to understand who this woman really is, the one who wore the mask of my wife for 4 years. Rachel slings the bag over her shoulder and heads toward the car. Her gait is light, almost dancing, despite the heavy boots and sticky mud under her feet. She resembles someone who's just had a massive weight lifted from her shoulders. I could stop her here and now. One shot and it's over, but something tells me that would be too easy, too merciful. No, I want her to face the consequences of her actions. Want to see her face when the mask finally falls. I quickly but silently descend the hill and run through the forest to my truck, choosing a route that will allow me to get ahead of her. In military intelligence, we call this preemptive interception. If the opponent thinks they're safe, let them believe so until the very end. 3. I return home, beating Rachel by a good 20 minutes. My house still resembles a battlefield, broken furniture, kicked in doors, bloodstains on the floor. But now it's empty. FBI agents have taken Eduardo Santos and Marco, and Foster himself went to the hospital. The darkness of the house feels comforting. I don't turn on lights. Moonlight penetrating through broken windows is quite sufficient. I quickly rebandage my shoulder. The wound has begun to ache, but bleeding has almost stopped. Then I walk into the living room and sit in an old armchair, from which chunks of foam protrude after the fight with the Spaniards. I place the hunting rifle across my knees, not for use, just to create an image. Rain intensifies, drumming on the roof like hundreds of tiny drummers. Strangely, I feel almost at peace. For the first time in a long while, I know exactly who I am and what I must do. The sound of an approaching car breaks the silence. A car door slams. Quick footsteps on the wet path. I slightly tilt my head and close my eyes, imitating the semi-conscious state of a wounded man. The door flings open, a strong kick. "Jack," Rachel cries with an artfully created note of panic in her voice. "Oh God, Jack." She rushes to me, falls to her knees beside the armchair. Her hands, cold and wet from rain, touch my face, check my pulse. "Jack, can you hear me? What happened? Who did this?" I slowly open my eyes, wincing as if in pain. "Rachel, you're okay." "Yes, yes, I'm fine," she hastily replies. "What happened here? Were we attacked?" "The Spaniards," I wheeze, watching her reaction. "They broke in looking for the priest and some relic, said something about you, that you're in cahoots with him." A shadow of concern flashes across her face, but she quickly regains control. At this moment I realize how good she is. Facial expressions, intonations, even the trembling of her hands, all perfectly calibrated to create the image of a frightened, loving wife. "This is madness," she shakes her head. "I don't know what they were talking about. I was at church, helping prepare for the charity gala. Suddenly Father David ran in, said some dangerous people were looking for him, that we were all in danger. He looked so terrified." Good story, close enough to the truth to sound convincing, far enough from it to save Rachel from suspicion. "And then?" I ask, wincing as she begins examining my wounds. "He told me to run, to hide somewhere. I was so scared, Jack. I just ran, hid in the forest for hours. Then when I decided the danger had passed, I returned home and found this." She gestures around the demolished room. "Oh God, Jack, I thought they'd killed you." Her eyes fill with tears, real tears. How does she do it? Is there some special technique for summoning tears on command? Or perhaps she really feels something for me, even a drop of sincerity in an ocean of lies. "The FBI took them," I say. "Agent Foster." "FBI?" Her eyebrows shoot up in perfectly acted surprise. "What do they want here?" "They were hunting con artists who rob churches. Seems our new priest isn't quite who he claims to be." Rachel shakes her head, her face the embodiment of shock and disbelief. "I can't believe it. He seemed so sincere, so pious." She begins bandaging my wound, and I notice how her fingers press slightly harder on the damaged flesh, causing additional pain. Testing my reaction, or enjoying my suffering. "You need to go to the hospital," she says, finishing the bandaging. "No," I shake my head. "No time. We need to leave here immediately." "Leave?" She raises an eyebrow. "Where to?" "Anywhere away from here. You've seen what happened to our house. What will happen if these people return, or their friends? The mafia has long arms." I see hope ignite in her eyes. My plan worked. She thinks she's found the perfect way out of the situation. Escape with me, with her faithful husband, taking the relic. Reach a safe place, then dispose of me one way or another. "You're right," she nods. "We need to leave. I'll pack our things." She goes upstairs and begins packing a suitcase. I hear her moving around the bedroom, opening and closing drawers. While Rachel is busy packing, I use the moment to contact Foster. I send a short message to his secure number. The relic will be with her when she tries to escape. Be ready. After a couple of minutes comes the reply. "Understood. Capture team in position. Be careful." I return to the armchair and wait. Through a gap in the curtains, I see Rachel carefully carrying a bag to the car, the same one with the relic. Then she returns to the house. The last thing she does before leaving, checks the contents of her small cosmetic bag. I know what she keeps there. A compact lady's pistol, small enough to fit in the palm of her hand, but powerful enough to kill at close range. While she's in the bathroom, I quickly replace the bullets in her pistol with blanks. An old trick we were taught in counterintelligence. Never leave an opponent's weapon loaded if you have a chance to change it. We leave the house. I sit in the passenger seat, ostensibly because of my wound, actually to better observe her actions. Rachel takes the wheel. The car starts, carrying us away from the ruined house that was never a real home, just a set for the long performance called our marriage. 4. We drive in silence. The rain has almost stopped. Moonlight silvers puddles on the road. Rachel drives confidently, like someone accustomed to night chases and escape. I wonder how many times she's done this before. How many men before me believed they'd found a life companion in her, only to wake up one day with an empty half of the bed and a cleaned-out bank account. We turn onto the mountain road I recently pursued her and the priest on. No cars pass at this hour, the perfect place for what must happen. "Where are we heading?" I ask, breaking the silence. "To the coast," she replies. "I have a friend who can give us shelter for a while, then we'll decide what to do next." Friend, probably another man she plans to use, or perhaps a fence for stolen religious relics. Sounds reasonable, I nod, then after a pause add, Gabriella. The car swerved slightly, but Rachel quickly regained control. Her eyes still on the road, but her body tensed like a cat before pouncing. What did you say? I called you by your real name, Gabriella Morty, I calmly reply. Or do you prefer Gabby? That's what Marcos called you, right? She remains silent for several seconds, then abruptly breaks. The car stops in the middle of the deserted road. Around us, dark forest; above us, starry sky, gradually clearing of clouds. How do you know? Her voice sounds different, lower, harder, without the pretend softness I was accustomed to. I know everything, I reply, turning to her. About you and Marcos, about your church thefts, about the relic you stole from Santos 5 years ago and decided to steal again, about all your plans, and about how you pushed him into the sawmill pit a couple of hours ago. Her face changes, the mask finally falls away. Before me is no longer Rachel, the loving wife and pious parishioner. Before me is Gabriella, a cold, calculating criminal. And what do you intend to do with this knowledge? She asks, unbuckling her seatbelt and turning her whole body toward me. For starters, learn the truth, I say. Just once in my life, hear the truth from you. She smirks, the bitter smirk of a cornered person. The truth? Do you really think you can handle it? Try me. Gabriella leans back in her seat, assessing the situation. I see her brain working, calculating options. Fine, she finally says. The truth is I never loved you, Jack. You were just cover. Convenient, predictable, stable cover. A war veteran with post-traumatic stress who so craved home and family he was willing to believe anything just to avoid being alone. Her words wound, but I don't show it. Won't give her that satisfaction. Continue, I say in a neutral tone. What else do you want to hear? She shrugs. That every time we made love, I imagined Marcos. That every touch from you made me inwardly shudder. That all these years I counted the days until I could finally be rid of you. And Marcos, I ask, did you love him? For a moment something flashes in her eyes. Genuine pain, sadness, longing. 12 years, she says quietly. We were together for 12 years, since I turned 20. He found me on the street, a hungry, desperate girl ready to do anything for a piece of bread. He taught me everything I know. How to change identity, how to gain trust, how to play a role, how to survive in this world. And you thanked him by pushing him into a pit. She doesn't deny it, doesn't justify herself. Just looks at me with that same evaluating gaze. I was going to do the same to you, she says after a pause. Not today. In a month or two, when everything quieted down. An accident during hunting or fishing. Or maybe suicide, veteran with PTSD, who would care? No one would have questioned it. And the medallion, I ask. Is it worth it? Worth the life of a man you supposedly loved for 12 years? She smirks. You can't even imagine how much it's worth. 15 million minimum, maybe 20. With the right buyer, even more. Enough to disappear forever. Start a new life somewhere on an island where no one has ever heard the name Gabriella Morty. Or Jack Harper. Yes, she nods, or Jack Harper. In her eyes I see determination. She's made a decision. Her hand slowly slides toward her purse. You know, she says, feeling for the pistol, I really didn't want it to end like this. Part of me hoped we could reach the coast before I'd have to take measures, but apparently fate decided otherwise. 5. Gabriella pulls out the pistol and aims it at my chest. Her hand doesn't tremble. Her eyes are cold and focused. Sorry, Jack, she says. Nothing personal, just business. Her finger rests on the trigger, and I almost admire how professionally she does this. No theatrics, no unnecessary movements, just the precise, measured action of someone for whom violence is part of the job. Click, the pistol misfires. She frowns, presses the trigger again. Click and again, click. I replaced the bullets when you were in the shower, I say, not moving from my spot. Sniper habit, always check weapons. Her face contorts with rage. She lunges at me, trying to hit me in the head with the pistol. I easily block the blow and grab her wrist. Enough, Gabriella, it's over. Nothing's over, she hisses, trying to break free. You think I can't handle you? I pushed a man a head taller than you and twice as heavy into a pit. He turned his back on you, I reply. I won't do that. We struggle for several seconds, but her efforts are futile. Years of military training give me the advantage, despite my wounded shoulder. Eventually, she gives up, collapsing back into her seat. What now? She asks, breathing heavily. Will you shoot me, avenge your violated honor, or perhaps drive me to the police like a law-abiding citizen? Neither, I reply, and at that moment bright floodlights flash on around the car. FBI agents seem to materialize from nowhere, surrounding the vehicle on all sides. Their weapons are pointed at us, but I know there's only one target. Gabriella freezes, assessing the situation, then slowly raises her hands. You set me up, she says, and in her voice I hear something resembling respect. Well played, Jack. I underestimated you. Many make that mistake, I reply, opening the car door and stepping out with raised hands so agents don't mistake me for the target. Foster, shoulder bandaged, steps forward. Gabriella Morty, you're under arrest for theft, fraud, conspiracy to commit a crime, and the murder of Marcos Valencia. Agents open the driver's door and pull Gabriella out. She doesn't resist when they handcuff her. Her gaze remains fixed on me, containing a strange mixture of emotions: anger, respect, regret. The bag with the relic is in the trunk, I tell Foster. St. Francis medallion and church vessels. He nods and orders someone to check the trunk. Gabriella is led to one of the FBI cars. Passing me, she stops. Marcos and I loved each other from day one, she says quietly. You were just a convenient tool. You never really knew me. I look into her eyes, eyes of the woman I considered my wife for 4 years, whom, despite everything, I loved. I know you well enough, I reply, more than I'd like to. They lead her away and I remain alone in the middle of the road, surrounded by FBI agents and the flashing lights of their vehicles. A wave of emptiness washes over me. It's over. My life with Rachel, which never existed. My illusion of home and family. My last attempt at normalcy. Foster approaches, holding the bag with the relic. We found Valencia's body in the sawmill, he says. Dead as expected, broke his neck in the fall. I nod, unable to squeeze out a word. The medallion will be returned to the Vatican, Foster continues. Its true historical value is immeasurable. What will happen to her? I ask, nodding toward the car taking Gabriella away. Long sentence, Foster replies. Very long, if of course she can avoid Santos' revenge. He pauses, studying me with professional interest. How are you? I shrug. Alive, that's the main thing. You know, he says, the FBI will pay you a reward for helping capture these criminals and recovering the relic, enough to start a new life somewhere. I don't need a reward, I shake my head, but there is something you can do for me. What exactly? Help me get a job in your organized crime division. Foster raises an eyebrow. You sure it's not the most peaceful life? Have I ever sought a peaceful life? I smirk. I've discovered I'm really good at identifying fake priests and even better at recognizing false love. He gives me a long, evaluating look, then extends his hand. Welcome to the team, Harper. 6. The church in my new city differs little from hundreds of other American churches. White building with a simple spire, stained glass, wooden pews. I sit in the back row, away from parishioners dispersing after Sunday service. 3 months have passed since I last saw Gabriella/Rachel. 3 months of new life, new work, new goals. The FBI doesn't rush with bureaucratic formalities, but Foster keeps his word. I've already participated in 2 operations as a consultant. My house in Pine Ridge is sold. The range, too. Too many memories, too many ghosts of a life that never existed. Now I live in a small apartment in Seattle, 15 minutes from the FBI office. Minimal furniture, minimal personal items, but it's honest. It's real. When the church is almost empty, I approach the altar and light a candle. Not from religious conviction, more out of respect for tradition. After all, I'll be working with many religious artifacts in my new position. Need to know the rules of the game. "For whom are you praying, my son?" asks an elderly priest who has silently approached from behind. He has a kind face and eyes that have seen too much human suffering to judge anyone. A real priest, not pretending. "For myself, Father," I reply, watching the flickering candle flame, "to learn to believe again." He nods understandingly, not demanding explanations. That's the beauty of genuine servants of God. They know how to listen to silence. "Faith doesn't come immediately," he says. "Sometimes it takes years of trials before we learn to trust again. But remember, having a broken heart means you once had a heart capable of loving, and that is a gift." I look at the old man, his wrinkled face, kind eyes, work-worn hands, and wonder how many confessions he's heard in his long life, how many sins he's absolved, how much pain he's eased. "Thank you, Father," I say, and for the first time in a long while these words sound sincere. Leaving the church, I pause at the doors and look back. Inside, silence, peace, and order so lacking in my life. Outside, a noisy, chaotic world full of deception and dangers. My world. My phone vibrates in my pocket. Message from Foster. New case. Stolen icon in Boston. Looks like a familiar pattern. Can you be at the office in an hour? I smile, typing my response. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Descending the steps, I feel a strange contentment. My life with Rachel was a lie from beginning to end, but the pain I experienced was real, and the lessons I learned are also real. Perhaps the priest is right. Perhaps the ability to love, despite all betrayals, is indeed a real gift. A gift no one can steal, not even the most skilled thief. I get into my car and start the engine. Ahead, a new case, new mysteries, new dangers. But now I know who I am, and I know what needs to be done. This is my final duty to myself.